The morning fog clung to the Thames as Lady Eleanor Ashford's carriage rattled toward Westminster Palace. Through the window she watched London awaken chimney sweeps blackened with soot, flower girls arranging their baskets, gaslights flickering against the gray dawn. Her gloved fingers trembled as they adjusted the emerald necklace at her throat. Today, after 7 years of marriage, after sacrificing her inheritance to bolster Sebastian's political position, she would finally receive what had been promised, the coronation as Archduchess's consort. The great marble stairs were already lined with nobility, their silk gowns creating a river of color against the stone. Red-coated guards stood at attention beneath towering bearskin caps. Above it all, Westminster's neoclassical columns rose like ancient sentinels, and the gray London sky pressed down with the weight of centuries. Eleanor stepped from the carriage, her emerald gown rustling, heads turned. Whispers rippled through the assembled nobles. She held her head high, beginning the long ascent. The faces on either side were familiar: Lady Pemberton with her ostrich feather hat, Lord Wickham, who owed Sebastian political debts, the Duchess of Marlborough, whose approval could make or break reputations. Halfway up, Eleanor's eyes met Sebastian's. For a fraction of a second, she saw something flicker across his face. Not love, not pride, just calculation. The same look he gave political opponents. "Eleanor," he said when she reached the top, his charming voice distant, "you look radiant." "Thank you, my lord," she replied, the formal address bitter on her tongue. The ceremony master cleared his throat. "My lords, ladies and gentlemen, we gathered to witness the elevation of Archduke Sebastian Ashford and the coronation of his consort." Eleanor positioned herself beside Sebastian, heart hammering. This was it, the moment she'd sacrificed everything for. A velvet cushion was brought forth bearing 2 crowns. The Archduke's crown, heavy with rubies and gold. The second, smaller, more delicate silver filigree set with emeralds that matched her eyes. It was beautiful. It was hers. But Sebastian's hand passed over it. Eleanor's breath stopped. "Before I accept this honor," Sebastian's voice rang out, "I must speak of the woman who truly deserves to stand beside me in this moment of triumph." Relief flooded through Eleanor. He was acknowledging her sacrifices, Princess Hazel Beaumont. Eleanor's world tilted. Through the crowd came Princess Hazel, daughter of the Duke of Beaumont. Her platinum blonde curls bounced with each step, her pale pink gown glowing against the gray stone. She was ethereally beautiful, wide blue eyes, porcelain skin, a smile suggesting innocence while her gaze held triumph. "No," Eleanor whispered, lost in the collective gasp. Hazel glided up the stairs, her small hand extended. Sebastian took it, raised it to his lips, the intimacy of the gesture a knife between Eleanor's ribs. "Princess Hazel has been my closest confidant," Sebastian continued. "Her wisdom, her grace, her unwavering support have been instrumental in my rise. It is she who deserves the throne of honor beside me." He lifted the silver crown, Eleanor's crown. The emeralds caught the weak sunlight, mocking her with their green fire. He turned to Hazel, whose blue eyes shimmered with practiced tears. "Princess Hazel Beaumont, I offer you this throne of honor as my truest companion and the lady of my heart." He placed the crown upon Hazel's golden head. Absolute silence followed. Eleanor stood frozen, face drained of color. Around her, stares, whispers rising like a tide. Lady Pemberton's feathers quivered with scandal. The Duchess showed the particular pleasure of witnessing spectacular ruin that wasn't her own. "Sebastian," Eleanor managed, voice cracking. "What are you, Lady Eleanor? You have served well as my wife in name, but titles alone do not make a partnership. The princess understands the demands of power in ways that you, my dear, never could." The words landed like blows. Eleanor felt her chest constrict, tears burning, but she wouldn't cry here. Not in front of them all. Hazel stepped forward, crown glittering. "My Lord Archduke, perhaps we should proceed with your coronation." The crowd grows restless. Eleanor turned, her emerald skirts catching, and began to descend. Behind her, the ceremony continued. She heard Sebastian proclaimed Archduke, heard muted cheers, heard Hazel's delighted laugh. Each step down felt like descent into hell. Faces that had shown respect now showed pity, schadenfreude, uncomfortable sympathy. Only one face showed something different, Lord Edmund Hartley. Her father's oldest friend stood at the base with brown eyes filled with genuine concern. "Eleanor," he said quietly, hand gentle on her elbow, "my carriage is here home." Eleanor laughed bitterly. "I don't have a home anymore, Edmund. I gave everything to make him what he is. And for what? To be replaced by a girl barely 23? Not here. Let's get you away from their eyes." As they pulled away from Westminster, Eleanor looked back once. Sebastian stood at the top, Archduke's crown upon his head, Hazel at his side in Eleanor's crown. They looked every inch the perfect couple, and Eleanor was nothing but a discarded piece in a game she hadn't realized she was playing. The tears fell at last, hot paths down her cheeks. What will I do? I have no money. It all went to his campaigns. My family's estate was sold to pay his debts. I have no position, no standing. He's made me a laughingstock. Edmund was quiet, then said, Your father once told me the Ashford family, your family, they were strategic. Your grandfather didn't build an empire by accepting defeat. He built it by understanding that setbacks are setups for comebacks. Eleanor turned to him, tears still bright but sharpening with something harder. Are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you are the woman who turned a baron's son into an archduke. If you could build him up, Lady Eleanor, what could you do if you decided to tear him down? The words hung dangerous and thrilling. Through the window, Eleanor watched London pass vendors, servants, merchants who made up the true body of the city. She'd forgotten there were other kinds of power. Take me to Covent Garden Market, she said suddenly. The market? Eleanor, my grandfather started with a single shop there. He understood real power doesn't just come from crowns. It comes from knowing who controls the purse strings, who holds the debts. Sebastian forgot that nobility needs money, and money has to come from somewhere. Edmund smiled slowly. Your grandfather would be proud. He would tell me to stop crying and start planning. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. The great covered market bustled with activity, flower sellers calling their wares, fruit pyramids, tea merchants filling the air with exotic scents. Eleanor stepped down, her gown immediately marking her as nobility. Whispers followed. Lady Eleanor? An old woman's voice spoke from a flower stall. Martha Green, who'd sold flowers to Eleanor's grandfather decades ago. Her hands were gnarled, but her eyes sharp. You look like you've had a worse morning than most. Word travels fast from Westminster. Then you know I've been made a fool. I know your husband's made himself one. Any man who throws away a woman with business sense like your grandfather had is a fool twice over. Your Sebastian might have got his title, but did he think about where his money's been coming from? Eleanor blinked. What do you mean? Martha leaned close. Your family's old money didn't all get spent on his campaigns, did it? Some went into investments. Your grandfather taught you that. And investments mean connections, and connections mean leverage. Memory stirred her grandfather at 16, sitting her down. Eleanor, remember this. Titles can be given and taken away. But ownership? That's forever. Always keep a piece of what you build. She'd forgotten. God, how had she forgotten? In her eagerness to support Sebastian, she'd put most of her fortune in his name. But not all. Small investments she'd kept under her control. Percentages of merchant ventures, properties, shares in a shipping company. Edmund, I need to speak with my solicitor today. In a cramped office above a tobacconist's, Mr. Blackwood laid out the facts. It's not as much as you once had, Lady Eleanor. But it's not insignificant. You own 20% of Hartley Shipping, 15% of 3 merchant houses, several properties in Southwark. And there are debts owed to your family that were never collected. Debts? From whom? Blackwood adjusted his spectacles. Several Parliament members, merchants who received your grandfather's capital, and satisfaction flickered across his face. The Duke of Beaumont. Eleanor's heart skipped. Hazel's father owes my family money. £50,000 borrowed 15 years ago, never repaid out of courtesy. With interest now £75,000. Eleanor sat back, mind spinning. Even wealthy men felt pressure when debts were called in publicly. If the Duke was under pressure, he'd pressure his daughter. And if Hazel was under pressure, call in the debt. My lady, that could create significant repercussions. Call in the debt. Send the notice today. Edmund turned from the window, concerned. Eleanor, this is declaring war? War was what Sebastian declared this morning when he humiliated me before all London. This is simply me responding. He forgot I'm not just some ornamental wife. I'm the woman who funded his rise. And now he'll learn what happens when you betray the person who made you. That afternoon, Eleanor walked through Hyde Park alone, scandalous for a day ago. But today the rules felt different. She was no longer bound by expectations of being an archduke's wife. She was something undefined and therefore more dangerous. Lady Eleanor. Lady Catherine Brennan approached, round face flushed. What happened this morning was absolutely appalling. Sebastian's behavior was inexcusable. You should know not everyone is laughing. Many of us remember who bankrolled his campaigns, who made him what he is. That was you. The straightforward honesty made Eleanor's throat tighten. Thank you, Catherine. What will you do now? I'm going to rebuild. Sebastian wanted the throne. Let him have it. But he'll find that sitting on a throne requires more than a crown and a princess. It requires money and connections and leverage. And I'm going to make sure he remembers exactly who provided those things. Catherine's eyes widened. Eleanor, that sounds like revenge? Perhaps. Or perhaps just good business. As sun descended, Eleanor found herself at Westminster Bridge. The Thames flowed dark and eternal while Big Ben's silhouette marked 4 chimes echoing across the city. She stood at the railing, allowing herself one moment of pure grief. She'd loved Sebastian once, desperately. When had she become a means to an end? Or had she always been that, too besotted to see? Beautiful view, isn't it? A man's voice beside her. It's Lord Thomas Ashworth, a younger son with no title but shrewd investment reputation. Dark hair silvering at temples, intelligent eyes. I heard about this morning's debacle, forgive my bluntness, and wondered what Eleanor Ashford would do next. Your grandfather was one of the shrewdest men I knew. I suspect you inherited that quality. Is there a point, my lord? Sebastian has made powerful friends, but also enemies. Men who felt slighted. If someone clever united those enemies, reminded them Sebastian's power came from someone else's money, that could be very interesting. Eleanor studied him. And you're one of these enemies? I value loyalty and despise those who throw it away. Also, I hold debts Sebastian guaranteed in your name. I'm concerned whether they'll be honored now your position has changed. Everyone wanted something, but that didn't mean they couldn't be useful. Your debts will be honored. I may have lost my position, but not my integrity. However, if you're interested in seeing Sebastian's pride checked, I might have thoughts on how that could be achieved. Purely for business reasons. Thomas's smile widened. Purely for business. Lady Eleanor, we should have dinner soon, to discuss mutual interests. As Thomas departed, Eleanor turned back to the river. The sun was almost gone, gaslights beginning to glow. She'd been destroyed today. But standing there, feeling cool air and solid stone beneath her feet, Eleanor realized something fundamental had changed inside her. The nervous, hopeful woman who'd ascended those stairs this morning was gone. In her place was someone harder, someone who understood kindness and loyalty were often seen as weakness. Sebastian and Hazel wanted the glittering surface grounds, ceremonies, adoration. Fine. Eleanor would take something more substantial, control of the foundations. And when she was done, she'd watch how long they maintained their pretty picture when the ground beneath them crumbled. The game had changed, but it was far from over. Over following days, Eleanor threw herself into work with shocking intensity. She met merchants in offices above warehouses, discussing shipping routes and tariffs. She attended intimate dinners where real power was negotiated. Her grandfather's name still carried weight where money mattered more than titles. At Covent Garden, Martha Green shared rumors. Word is the Duke of Beaumont's in a state about some old debt. Had to sell properties in Cheapside. His daughter's been seen crying in her carriage. Eleanor felt fierce satisfaction. How unfortunate. Also heard the Archduke's having parliamentary trouble. Things he thought certain suddenly aren't. Martha's eyes twinkled. Funny how these things happen. Eleanor met with allies at Lord Ashworth's townhouse parliament members. Disillusioned with Sebastian, shipping magnate Cornelius Webb, Lady Catherine, and surprisingly, the Duchess of Marlborough. Lady Eleanor, the Duchess said, how unexpected seeing you in business affairs. I always thought you were wasted as decorative wife. Eleanor took it as compliment. Being thrown away rather focuses the mind. They laid out strategy. Parliament members would quietly oppose Sebastian's initiatives. Webb would redirect shipping contracts away from Beaumont's allies. Ashworth would spread rumors about Sebastian's financial stability. The Duchess would ensure every drawing room heard whispers about Sebastian's judgment and Hazel's manipulation. What about you? Catherine asked. I managed the money. Every alliance Sebastian made was purchased with my capital. I'll make sure everyone knows that and ensure capital flows in different directions now. A financial siege, Webb mused. The man'll be Archduke in title, but pauper in practice. Not quite a pauper, Eleanor corrected. I want him to understand what he threw away. To realize his throne wobbles because the foundation I built has been removed. A week later, Sebastian confronted her in the library. He looked haggard, shadows under eyes, cravat askew, golden hair imperfect. What do you think you're doing? I've had merchants cancel contracts, parliament members reverse support, and the Duke demanding to know why his daughter cries because of some debt you called in. Eleanor looked up coolly. I'm doing business, Sebastian. You never minded when profits funded your career. You're deliberately sabotaging me, am I? Or am I redirecting my resources toward more reliable investments? You made clear you don't value my partnership, so I'm finding new partners. You're my wife. Your duty is to support me. My duty? Steel underneath her quiet voice. I fulfilled my duty for 7 years. I gave you everything. And you repaid that by humiliating me before all London, giving another woman the position rightfully mine. Hazel understands politics in ways you never did. Hazel understands manipulation, but not commerce, not the foundation of power, not loyalty. Neither do you. If you continue, I'll divorce you. Ruin what's left of your reputation. Eleanor laughed bitterly. Ruin my reputation? Sebastian, you already did that at Westminster. Divorce me? Please do. Because the moment you file papers, every debt in my name becomes public record, and all London will know exactly who made the Archduke. Sebastian stared. You've changed. No, I have simply remembered who I was before you, my grandfather's granddaughter. A woman who understands power isn't given. It's built, maintained, defended. After he left, Edmund whistled low. Impressive. And dangerous. He can't hurt me anymore. The worst has happened. Now I'm just making sure he understands the consequences. Eleanor's campaign became overt. She attended social functions, charitable events, museum openings, garden parties, always impeccable. Always composed, always with subtle comments reminding people of Sebastian's betrayal. At a charity auction in the British Museum courtyard on a rare sunny afternoon, Eleanor finally faced Hazel. The princess wore matching blue with Sebastian, Eleanor's crown casually on her head. When their eyes met, surprise flickered across Hazel's features. Clearly she hadn't expected Eleanor looking radiant in deep forest green that made her eyes luminous. Hazel approached, pink skirts swishing, Sebastian trailing uncomfortably. Lady Eleanor, how lovely to see you out. I was worried you might be indisposed after recent events. The crowd quieted, sensing drama. Eleanor smiled without warmth. Princess Hazel, how kind of you to be concerned. But I'm quite well. Heartbreak is remarkably survivable when one has work. Work? Surely you don't mean business, commerce, investment management, the sort of thing that actually keeps London running while we play at ceremonies and crowns. Eleanor's gaze drifted to the coronet. That's lovely, by the way. It belonged to my grandmother. I'm glad it's being used, even if not by whom she intended. Hazel flushed pink. Sebastian gave it to me. It's mine now. Everything Sebastian gave you was purchased with my money, princess. Every jewel, every gown, every luxury you enjoy was funded by the fortune I brought, but enjoy them while you can. I hear the Duke of Beaumont is having financial difficulties. Once that's common knowledge, I wonder how secure your position truly is. Sebastian stepped forward, voice dangerous. Eleanor, that's enough, is it? I'm simply making conversation. Or is honesty another thing you'd prefer I gave up along with my fortune and dignity? You're making a scene. No, you made the scene. At Westminster, before all London. I'm simply living with the consequences as openly as you created them. Eleanor stepped back, nodding with perfect courtesy. Excuse me. Lord Ashworth has arrived, and we have business to discuss. She walked away head high, feeling their stares, hearing the immediate whispers explode. Let them talk. Every word was another nail in his credibility's coffin. That evening at Trafalgar Square, Thomas Ashworth found her by the fountain. The entire museum was abuzz. Poor Princess Hazel looked ready to cry. Good. She should understand what uncertainty feels like. The Duke paid his debt this afternoon. £75,000 with a reportedly cold note. You've made a powerful enemy. I'll add him to the list. Eleanor watched a street musician pack up. Thomas, am I becoming what I hated about Sebastian? Calculating, manipulative, willing to hurt others? Thomas considered seriously. There's a difference. Sebastian hurt you for ambition and vanity. You're defending yourself and reclaiming what was taken. That's not the same. When does self-defense become revenge? Maybe they're the same thing. Maybe revenge is just delayed self-defense. You're not trying to destroy them, Eleanor. You're restoring balance. Eleanor wanted to believe him, but walking home through gaslit streets, she wondered if she'd crossed a line. Had she become so focused on making Sebastian suffer she'd lost sight of who she wanted to be? The question haunted her. But meeting with her allies, merchants, nobles, political operators, and seeing their respect, how they listened and implemented her strategies, Eleanor realized something important. For 7 years, she'd defined herself through Sebastian. His wife, his supporter, his financier. She'd been his extension. Now she was becoming herself again. Eleanor Ashford, yes, but more Eleanor Hartwell. Granddaughter of a merchant prince, daughter of an earl, a woman with her own power and purpose. If that meant being calculating, strategic, occasionally ruthless, so be it. The alternative was staying broken, and Eleanor was done being broken. A month after the coronation, consequences showed. Sebastian's parliamentary influence had weakened measurably. The Duke of Beaumont was forced to sell more properties. Hazel was notably absent from social functions, suffering nervous headaches, but Eleanor's victory had costs. Traditional families closed doors to her, viewing business dealings as unbecoming. She was uninvited from balls and garden parties. Whispers followed, unwomanly, vengeful, unnatural. Edmund found her in Hyde Park one misty morning, sitting by Serpentine Lake, watching swans glide across water reflecting gray sky. He sat beside her quietly. Having second thoughts? Eleanor shook her head. But I'm having thoughts about what comes after. After what? After I've made my point, after Sebastian understands what he lost, after I've proven I'm not just some discarded wife. She turned to Edmund, looking older, matured, hardened. What do you want your legacy to be? I don't know anymore. A month ago I wanted to be Archduchess's consort. Before that, a good wife. Now, I want to be more than defined by my relationship to Sebastian, either as his wife or enemy. Then perhaps, Edmund suggested, it's time to build something of your own. Not just tearing down what he built, but creating something new. The idea resonated like a struck bell. Building something. She thought of her grandfather, who hadn't just inherited wealth, but built an empire from a single shop. Martha Green at her flower stall. All the women in London who worked with no inheritance or title but made their own way. I want to create something that helps women like me, Eleanor said slowly, idea forming as she spoke. Women who've been discarded or never had opportunities. A business. No, Mara Network. Capital for women who want to start enterprises. Education for those who need skills. Protection for the vulnerable. Edmund smiled. Your grandfather would be proud. Though this will scandalize London even more than your vendetta against Sebastian. Good. Let them be scandalized. I'm tired of living by their rules. Rules that benefited me when useful and discarded me when not. If I'm going to be scandalous anyway, might as well be scandalous for something worthwhile. Eleanor threw herself into her new project. She met businesswomen who'd succeeded, a dressmaker employing 50 women, a publisher specializing in female authors, a chemist with her own cosmetics line. She consulted educators about needed skills. She toured factories, seeing conditions women worked in. Slowly she assembled what she called the Hartwell Initiative, named for her family, not her married name. It would provide microloans to women starting businesses, offer educational programs in bookkeeping and trades, create a support network for women navigating male-dominated commerce. She poured her capital in, recruited other wealthy women, even convinced progressive men that investing in women's economic independence was sound strategy. The work was exhausting but fulfilling in ways Eleanor hadn't experienced in years. She was building something meaningful, something that would outlast any personal drama. And as the Hartwell Initiative took shape, people stopped calling her that poor lady Sebastian betrayed and started calling her that remarkable woman changing London. The official launch was held in Covent Garden Market, with Martha Green's stall prominently featured. The market was transformed, banners explaining the mission, booths showcasing women-owned businesses. A crowd gathered, merchants, workers, curious nobles, dozens of women interested in opportunities Eleanor offered. It was loud, chaotic, gloriously alive. Sebastian and Hazel arrived in an ornate carriage, clearly making a statement. The princess looked paler than usual, the silver coronet seeming heavier. Sebastian himself looked haggard, stress evident around his eyes. Eleanor, he said, something different in his voice. Not quite contrition, but no longer arrogant certainty. This is, impressive, thank you. I didn't expect to see. I wanted to see what you've been working on. They say you're investing a fortune. My fortune, not yours. Not anymore. This is mine, Sebastian. Built on my terms for my purposes. Hazel spoke, voice sweet. It's very charitable, Lady Eleanor. Though some might question whether it's appropriate for a woman of your station to be so involved in trade. Eleanor turned her green eyes on the princess. No anger anymore. Just cool assessment. I've learned something, princess. Appropriate doesn't matter, effective does. I spent 7 years being appropriate, being the perfect wife, and where did it get me? Standing on Westminster stairs watching another woman claim my crown. So yes, I'm involved in trade, business, helping women who don't have the luxury of being decorative. If that's inappropriate, I'll wear the judgment gladly. Eleanor, Sebastian said, unmistakable regret in his voice. I know I hurt you. I know what I did was exactly what you intended, Eleanor interrupted. Don't apologize now. You made a choice. You chose power over loyalty. That's your right. But don't pretend you didn't know what you were doing, and don't expect me to make it easier with half-hearted regrets. I'm not offering regrets. I'm offering acknowledgement. You've made your point. You've shown everyone you're not someone to dismiss. You've hurt my standing, damaged my alliances, turned yourself into some folk hero. Are you satisfied? Eleanor considered seriously. No, but I'm getting there. Because I've realized this was never about you. It was about me. About remembering who I was before you and becoming someone even better. You were just the catalyst. She turned away toward the podium. Behind her, she heard Hazel whisper to Sebastian, heard his sharp response, heard their retreating footsteps. But Eleanor didn't look back. She'd spent too much time looking backward, dwelling on loss. Now she was looking forward. Her speech was honest. She spoke about betrayal and resilience, about giving everything only to have it thrown away. She spoke about her grandfather's legacy and her determination to honor it by helping other women build their own. She spoke about the future, not just hers, but London's, England's, a world where women had options beyond marriage and dependence. The applause was thunderous, not polite aristocratic pattering, but genuine enthusiasm from people who'd heard something meaningful. Martha Green cried openly. Edmund beamed with pride. Even the Duchess of Marlborough looked genuinely moved. That evening, walking through Regent Street, Eleanor noticed things she'd never paid attention to before. Shop girls closing up, tired but proud. Women hurrying home to families they supported. Flower sellers and fruit vendors and seamstresses making up London's invisible economic foundation. These were her people now, in a way aristocracy never had been. She passed a bookshop, and one title caught her eye. The Subjection of Women by John Stuart Mill. On impulse, she purchased it. The clerk, a young woman with ink-stained fingers, recognized her. Lady Eleanor? I wanted to thank you. My mother attended your launch. She's been wanting to start a millinery business for years, but never had capital. She applied for one of your loans. Eleanor felt warmth spread through her chest. I hope she gets it. What's her name? Mrs. Sarah Winters. She's incredibly talented, just never had the opportunity. I'll make sure her application gets proper consideration. Are you interested in business yourself? The girl looked startled. I've always loved books. I dream of having my own shop someday, but I'm just a clerk. Everyone starts somewhere. My grandfather started with a single stall in Covent Garden. If you're serious about owning a shop, come to the Hartwell Initiative offices next week. We have educational programs that might interest you. The girl's face lit up. Really? You'd help someone like me? Why not? That's what I'm building this for. People like you, like your mother, like me when I needed help and didn't have anywhere to turn. Leaving the shop, Eleanor realized she was happy. Not the nervous uncertainty ascending Westminster stairs 2 months ago. Not even the grim satisfaction orchestrating Sebastian's decline. But genuine contentment from knowing she was doing something meaningful, building something that would outlast any personal drama. Weeks turned into months. London moved through autumn toward winter. Eleanor's life had transformed completely. The Hartwell Initiative flourished, helping dozens of women start businesses or gain independence-enabling skills. Eleanor became fascinating, not as a scorned wife, but as a new kind of woman who refused to be defined by a man's rejection and instead created her own path. Sebastian's fortunes continued declining. Without Eleanor's money and connections, weaknesses in his political base became apparent. Votes that should have been secure fell through. Alliances crumbled. The Archduke title began feeling empty, impressive in name, but hollow in practice. And Hazel discovered being Archduke's consort was less glamorous when the Archduke had no real power. Whispers that had been about Eleanor's humiliation now centered on Hazel's miscalculation. She'd won the crown, but lost the kingdom. It was a gray December afternoon when Sebastian came to the Hartwell Initiative offices. Eleanor was reviewing applications when Hopkins announced him with barely concealed disapproval. Lord Sebastian Ashford wishes to see you, my lady. Shall I send him away? Eleanor looked up, considering. She could refuse. She had every right. But something in Hopkins' tone suggested Sebastian looked desperate, and Eleanor found herself curious rather than angry. No, Hopkins. Send him in. But stay close. Sebastian entered looking like a man aged a decade in 2 months. Golden hair had lost luster, face was drawn, expensive clothes hung loose. But his eyes, those cold blue-gray eyes, now held something unexpected. Genuine remorse. Eleanor, voice rough. Thank you for seeing me. What do you want, Sebastian? To tell you I've lost my title. Parliament voted this morning. I'm no longer Archduke, just Lord Ashford. It's a minor nobleman with tarnished reputation and dwindling prospects. Eleanor felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, not even pity. Just strange emptiness where feelings for him used to be. I'm sorry to hear that, are you? Sebastian laughed bitterly without accusation. You orchestrated most of it. Your allies, your influence, your strategic withdrawal. You took everything I built, everything we built, and dismantled it piece by piece. No, you destroyed yourself. I simply stopped propping you up. Everything you lost because you built on sand. You valued appearance over substance, titles over loyalty, ambition over integrity. Those were your choices. Sebastian nodded slowly, sinking into the chair uninvited. You're right. I know you're right. That's why I'm here. Not to argue or threaten or manipulate, just to say, you won completely, and you deserved to win. The words, spoken with such defeated honesty, touched something in Eleanor she thought had died. What happened to Hazel? Gone. Returned to her father's estate 2 weeks ago. Turns out her devotion was contingent on my continued success. The moment Parliament questioned my position, she discovered urgent family business elsewhere. Sebastian looked up, wonder in his expression despite pain. You know what's strange? I feel relieved. Like I've been carrying impossible weight for years and someone finally made me put it down. Eleanor understood that feeling. She'd felt it herself the day she stopped trying to be Sebastian's perfect wife and started being herself. What will you do now? I don't know. I still have some income, properties. I thought I might leave London. Travel. See parts of the world that don't care about titles or social standing. He leaned forward slightly. But before I go, I needed to tell you something. What I did at Westminster humiliating you, it wasn't because you weren't enough. It was because I wasn't. I couldn't handle having a wife as capable as you, who saw through my pretensions. It was easier to replace you with someone who'd worship me blindly than stand beside someone who knew the truth. Eleanor felt the last knot of hurt in her chest finally loosen. This was what she'd needed without knowing it. Not his suffering, not his loss, but his understanding. I forgive you. Not because what you did was acceptable, but because I need to let it go. I built something wonderful from what you left behind. I don't want to carry your mistakes anymore. You're extraordinary. I should have protected that, cherished it. Instead, I tried to diminish it because it made me feel small. We both made mistakes. I made myself smaller to fit your ambitions. I forgot who I was. That was my failing, too. Sebastian stood, understanding the conversation had reached its end. Goodbye, Eleanor. I hope you find happiness that has nothing to do with me. I already have. But thank you. And Sebastian, I hope you find yourself. The real you, underneath all the pretension. He might be worth knowing. After he left, Eleanor sat long, staring out the window at the London afternoon. The winter sun was weak, barely penetrating gray clouds, but Eleanor felt warm. Light. Free. Hopkins appeared with tea. Is it finished then, my lady? Yes, it's finally finished. Spring came to London with unexpected warmth. The Hartwell Initiative expanded beyond Eleanor's most ambitious dreams, opening branches in 3 other cities, helping over 100 women start businesses. Eleanor had become something unprecedented, a woman wielding real economic power, changing lives through investment rather than charity, proving women's capabilities extended far beyond domestic spheres. She was invited to speak at universities. She advised businessmen who'd initially dismissed her. She wrote newspaper articles about economic reform. She served on boards of directors. She was creating not just a business, but a movement, showing London and all England that women could be more than ornamental wives or patient mothers. On a particularly beautiful day in late summer, Eleanor found herself at Highgate Cemetery, visiting her grandfather's tomb one last time before traveling to Manchester to open a new initiative branch. The ivy had grown thicker on the stone, but the inscription was still clear: build more than you inherit. She laid flowers at the base roses from Martha Green's stall, purchased with money earned through her own work. I did it, grandfather, she whispered. I built something that matters, not just businesses or networks, but myself. I became who I was always meant to be. The wind rustled through the ancient trees, and Eleanor felt peace wash over her. But as she turned to leave, she noticed a figure standing near the cemetery gates. A woman in a simple gray dress, her platinum blonde hair no longer styled in perfect curls but pulled back severely. Hazel Beaumont looked nothing like the princess who'd stolen a crown months ago. Her porcelain skin was sallow, her blue eyes red-rimmed, her expensive clothes replaced with modest garments. For a moment, Eleanor considered walking past without acknowledgement. But something in Hazel's posture, the way her shoulders hunched, the trembling of her hands made Eleanor stop. Princess Hazel, Eleanor said neutrally. Hazel flinched at the title. I'm not a princess anymore, just ... Hazel. Her voice was different too, the honey-sweet manipulation gone, replaced by something raw and broken. My father disowned me after the scandal. Said I'd brought shame to the family by associating with a fallen Archduke. Funny, isn't it? I thought I was climbing up, but I was really falling down. Eleanor studied her former rival. Part of her wanted to feel satisfaction at Hazel's downfall. But looking at this hollow-eyed young woman, Eleanor felt only a strange emptiness. "Why are you here?" "I've been working as a seamstress in Whitechapel," Hazel said, the admission clearly costing her. "One of my clients mentioned the Hartwell Initiative. Said you help women who have nowhere else to turn." I didn't believe her at first. Surely Eleanor Ashford wouldn't help me. Not after what I did. Her voice cracked. "But I'm desperate. I have a small talent for embroidery, and I thought maybe I could start something of my own. But I have no capital, no connections, why should I help you?" Eleanor interrupted, not cruelly, but honestly. "You took my crown. You stood beside my husband while he humiliated me. You enjoyed my pain." Hazel's face crumpled. "You're right. I don't deserve your help. I was cruel and manipulative and stupid. I thought beauty and tears could get me anything. I thought Sebastian would give me the world," she laughed bitterly. "Instead, he gave me nothing. The moment his power started crumbling, he blamed me. Said I was a distraction, a liability. He discarded me just like he discarded you. And I finally understood what you must have felt that day at Westminster." Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, watching emotions play across Hazel's face, genuine shame, regret, desperation. This wasn't the calculated princess from the coronation. This was a young woman who'd gambled everything on a man's promises and lost. "The Hartwell Initiative helps women who need second chances," Eleanor said finally. "Women who've been betrayed, abandoned, or simply never had opportunities. You certainly qualify." She paused, seeing hope flare in Hazel's eyes. "But I need to know, are you here because you truly want to change, or because you have nowhere else to go?" "Both," Hazel admitted, tears streaming now. "I'm here because I'm desperate. But I'm also here because watching you these past months, seeing what you built from your pain, made me realize I wasted my whole life being ornamental. I don't want to be that person anymore. I want to be someone who matters. Someone who builds things instead of just taking them." Eleanor considered. Every instinct told her to walk away, to let Hazel suffer as Eleanor had suffered. But she thought about Martha Green, about Emily Winters, about all the women she'd helped who'd made mistakes, who'd been foolish, who'd trusted the wrong people. Weren't they all deserving of second chances? "Come to the initiative offices tomorrow morning," Eleanor said. "Bring samples of your embroidery work. We'll assess your skills and see if we can help you develop a viable business plan. But understand this, Hazel, I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because the initiative's mission is to help all women who need it, even ones who've hurt me. And if you waste this opportunity or try to manipulate anyone involved, you'll never get another chance." "Clear?" Hazel nodded frantically, unable to speak through her tears. She reached out as if to embrace Eleanor, then thought better of it, dropping her hands. "Thank you. I don't deserve this, but thank you." As Hazel hurried away, Eleanor stood in the cemetery's shadow, processing what had just happened. Edmund appeared beside her. He'd been waiting discreetly by the carriage. "That was generous of you," he said. "Some might say too generous." "Perhaps," Eleanor replied. "But I realized something, Edmund. If I let my pain turn me into someone who enjoys others' suffering, then Sebastian truly won. He didn't just take my crown, he took my compassion. I won't let that happen." She smiled slightly. Besides, watching Hazel struggle to build something with her own hands, to earn respect through work instead of manipulation, that's far more satisfying than simply watching her suffer. "Your grandfather would say you're thinking like a true businesswoman, investing in people's potential, not their past." "My grandfather would probably say I'm being soft," Eleanor laughed. "But he also taught me that the strongest empires are built on opportunity, not oppression. If Hazel truly changes, she'll become living proof of what the initiative can do. And if she doesn't, well, I'll have lost nothing but time." The following weeks brought unexpected developments. Hazel appeared at the initiative offices every morning, hands ink-stained from practicing designs, eyes determined. She worked harder than anyone Eleanor had seen, as if trying to atone for every cruel word, every manipulative tear. Her embroidery was exquisite, delicate floral patterns that seemed to dance across fabric. Eleanor assigned her to work with a group of seamstresses developing a line of handcrafted goods for export. Hazel was quiet, humble, asking questions instead of assuming she knew best. The other women were suspicious at first. Word of her role in Eleanor's humiliation had spread, but gradually. Hazel's genuine effort won them over. One afternoon, Eleanor found Hazel working late, carefully embroidering a collar for a wedding dress. The younger woman looked up, startled. "I'm sorry, I know I should have asked permission to stay." "It's fine," Eleanor said, examining the work. "This is beautiful, Hazel. Truly." Hazel set down her needle, looking at Eleanor with something like wonder. "Why are you really helping me?" I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop for you to reveal this is all some elaborate revenge. But you've been nothing but fair. Eleanor sat across from her, considering the question. Because revenge isn't about making others suffer. Real revenge, the kind that matters, is becoming so successful that the people who hurt you become irrelevant. You and Sebastian taking my crown was the worst thing that ever happened to me, but it was also the best thing. It freed me to become this. She gestured around the workshop. If I'd gotten that crown at Westminster, I'd still be decorative, purposeless, defined by a man. So in a way, you gave me a gift. A terrible, painful gift, but a gift nonetheless. I wish I'd understood that before, Hazel said quietly. I wish I'd known that being someone's ornament isn't power. It's a cage. Now you know. What you do with that knowledge is up to you. 3 months after their cemetery encounter, Eleanor attended the grand opening of a new boutique in Mayfair. The shop specialized in handcrafted embroidered goods, each piece a small work of art. The owner, a young woman with platinum blonde hair styled simply. Wearing a modest but elegant blue dress, moved through the crowd with quiet confidence, thanking customers, discussing her work with genuine passion. Hazel had transformed. Not back into a princess, but forward into something new. A businesswoman, an artist, someone who'd earned her place through skill rather than beauty. She caught Eleanor's eye across the room and smiled. Not the manipulative sweetness from before, but something genuine and grateful. Edmund appeared at Eleanor's elbow. Did you ever imagine this? That the woman who took your crown would become one of your initiative's success stories? No, Eleanor admitted. But life rarely turns out how we imagine. I expected a crown at Westminster and got betrayal instead. I expected to destroy Sebastian and found purpose instead. I expected to hate Hazel forever and discovered forgiveness instead. She watched Hazel explaining her embroidery technique to a fascinated customer. Sometimes the best revenge is helping your enemies become better people. It's certainly more productive than helping them stay bitter. The shop door opened and Eleanor was surprised to see Sebastian enter. He looked different, still handsome but weathered, more genuine somehow. His expensive clothes were gone, replaced with a simple but well-made suit. He spotted Hazel and paused, then noticed Eleanor. For a moment the three of them stood frozen. The Archduke who'd been, the princess who'd fallen, and the wife who'd risen. Then Sebastian nodded respectfully to both women and quietly exited. He hadn't come to make amends or cause trouble. He'd simply come to see what Hazel had built, perhaps to understand what he'd lost. Do you think he learned anything? Edmund asked. I think he's learning, Eleanor replied, just like Hazel is learning, just like I learned. We're all just people, Edmund, trying to figure out who we are beneath the titles and expectations. She turned from the window, linking her arm through his. Come on. I have a meeting with the Queen's secretary this afternoon. Something about expanding the initiative throughout the Empire. The Queen? Edmund's eyebrows rose. Eleanor, you've come so far, we've come so far, she corrected. All of us. Every woman who dared to dream of more, every ally who supported us, every person who chose building over destroying. She glanced back once at Hazel's shop, at the young woman she'd chosen to help instead of hurt. That's the real coronation, Edmund. Not crowns placed on heads by others, but the crowns we weave from our choices, our compassion, our refusal to let pain turn us cruel. That evening, Eleanor stood on Westminster Bridge one final time, looking at the palace that had witnessed her transformation. The marble stairs where her old life had ended. The city that had seen her rise from humiliation to triumph. The river that had flowed through all of it, constant and eternal. She thought about Sebastian, somewhere in London, rebuilding his life. About Hazel in her shop, creating beauty with her own hands. About Martha Green still selling flowers in Covent Garden. About Emily Winters publishing books that mattered. About the hundreds of women whose lives had changed because one woman refused to stay broken. And she thought about herself, no longer the naive girl who'd climbed those stairs expecting a crown, no longer even the angry woman who'd plotted revenge. Just Eleanor, complete, whole, free. The sky above London was gray, as it so often was, but to Eleanor it had never looked more beautiful. Gray was the color of new beginnings, of fog that would lift to reveal unexpected vistas, of storms that watered the ground for future growth. Gray was the color of reality, stripped of false gilding and pretty lies. She had expected a crown at the royal ceremony. Instead, she'd received something infinitely better, the wisdom to know that true power came not from what others gave you, but from what you built yourself. Not from titles bestowed, but from purpose discovered. Not from revenge taken, but from forgiveness given. As the bells of London rang out across the twilight, 8 chimes echoing over the Thames, marking not an ending but an eternal present. Eleanor Hartwell Ashford smiled. She wore no crown of silver and emeralds, but she carried something far more precious, the knowledge that she had taken betrayal and turned it into catalyst, pain, and transformed it into purpose, loss, and alchemized it into liberation. She had been destroyed at Westminster, but from those ruins she had built an empire of opportunity. She had built a movement of change. She had built a legacy of compassion. She had built herself. And in doing so, she had discovered the only coronation that truly mattered, not the one denied, but the one earned. Not the crown placed on her head by a man who didn't value her, but the crown woven by her own hands from courage, vision, and the radical choice to help even those who'd hurt her. Because that, Eleanor understood finally and completely, was what it meant to be truly royal. 5 years had passed since that fateful coronation at Westminster. London had changed, and Eleanor had changed with it. The Hartwell Initiative now operated in 12 cities across England, with plans to expand to Scotland and Ireland. Over 1,000 women had received loans, training, or support. The initiative had become more than a business. It was a symbol of what women could achieve when given opportunity. Eleanor stood in the drawing room of her new townhouse, purchased entirely with her own earnings. Not a penny from Sebastian's name attached to it. The walls were lined with photographs. Martha Green surrounded by her 3 daughters, all now running their own businesses. Emily Winters at the opening of her 3rd bookshop. Hazel presenting her embroidered pieces to a gathering of merchants, and dozens more faces, each one a story of transformation. A knock at the door brought Hopkins, now her permanent secretary and closest confidant. "My lady, you have a visitor. She says it's urgent and refuses to give her name, but she insists you'll want to see her." Eleanor frowned, setting down her teacup. "Show her in, Hopkins." The woman who entered was elegant, perhaps 60 years old, with silver hair and regal bearing. She wore mourning black, and her face was lined with grief, but also with something else: determination. "Lady Eleanor," the woman said, her voice cultured and tired, "forgive the intrusion. I am Duchess Catherine Ashford, Sebastian's mother." Eleanor's breath caught. She'd never met Sebastian's mother. The woman had been traveling in Italy during the entire courtship and marriage, returning to England only after the scandal. By then, Eleanor and Sebastian were estranged, and any meeting would have been impossibly awkward. "Your Grace," Eleanor said carefully, gesturing to a chair. "Please, sit. May I offer you tea?" "Thank you, but no." The Duchess sat with the weariness of someone carrying a heavy burden. "I've come because my son is dying." The words hung in the air like a death knell. Eleanor felt her heart constrict despite everything. "Dying? Sebastian is only 37, consumption," the Duchess said quietly. "He contracted it 2 years ago while traveling in the East. He kept it hidden, too proud to seek help. By the time I learned of it, the disease had progressed too far. The doctors give him perhaps 3 months. Eleanor sank into her own chair, mind reeling. Sebastian, golden-haired and arrogant, dying. I'm so sorry, Your Grace." "Why are you telling me this?" The Duchess's eyes, so like Sebastian's blue-gray but warmer, filled with tears. "Because he asks for you. Every day he speaks your name. Not Hazel's. Not any of the dozens of women who threw themselves at him during his brief moment of glory. Yours, Eleanor. He says it like a prayer, like a confession, like a man seeking absolution he knows he doesn't deserve. I don't understand. Sebastian and I haven't spoken in over 4 years. After that day in my office, I know what my son did to you," the Duchess interrupted gently. "I know about the coronation, about the humiliation, about the cruelty. When I returned to England and learned what had happened, I was ashamed to be his mother. I cut off his allowance, refused to see him, let him know exactly what I thought of his character." She dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. "But he's dying, Lady Eleanor. And a mother's love, even for a son who's made terrible choices, doesn't simply end. He's asked for you. I'm here to beg you to grant him one final conversation." Eleanor stood, walking to the window that overlooked her garden. Outside, roses bloomed, descendants of cuttings from Martha Green's stall, planted when Eleanor first bought this house. She'd built a life here, a good life, free from Sebastian's shadow. Did she really want to invite that darkness back in, even for a moment? What could he possibly have to say to me that wasn't said years ago? I don't know, the Duchess admitted. But I see something in his eyes that I haven't seen since he was a boy. Genuine remorse. Not the calculated regret of a man who wants something, but the deep sorrow of someone who truly understands the harm he caused. Whatever he needs to say, I believe he needs to say it before he dies. And I think, forgive me for presuming, but I think you might need to hear it. Eleanor closed her eyes, thinking of the woman she'd been at Westminster, destroyed by Sebastian's betrayal. Then thinking of the woman she'd become, strong, purposeful, complete. Could that woman afford one conversation with a dying man? Could she refuse? Where is he? At my estate in Surrey. The country air is better for his lungs, though at this stage it makes little difference. Eleanor turned back to face the Duchess. I'll come tomorrow, but, Your Grace, I'm not going to offer him comfort or forgiveness just because he's dying. If he has something to say, I'll listen. That's all I can promise. The Duchess stood, relief evident on her face. That's more than he deserves. Thank you, Lady Eleanor. Whatever else my son did, he wasn't wrong about one thing. You were extraordinary. The journey to Surrey the next day was quiet. Eleanor took the train, watching the London smoke give way to green countryside, her mind churning with memories. Sebastian teaching her to dance at their engagement ball. Sebastian laughing at something she'd said over dinner. Sebastian turning cold as ambition consumed him. Sebastian placing a crown on another woman's head. The Duchess's estate was smaller than Eleanor, expected elegant but not ostentatious, surrounded by gardens going slightly wild with late summer growth. A servant led Eleanor upstairs to a sunlit bedroom where Sebastian lay propped against pillows, looking like a ghost of himself. He'd always been handsome, but illness had refined him down to something almost ethereal. His golden hair was thin and dull, his face gaunt, his hands skeletal where they rested on the coverlet. But his eyes, those blue-gray eyes, were clearer than Eleanor had ever seen them, as if illness had burned away the deception and left only truth. "Eleanor," he whispered, and his voice cracked with emotion. "You came. I didn't think. After everything, you came." Eleanor sat in the chair beside the bed, maintaining her composure. "Your mother asked, and I suppose I was curious what you could possibly have to say after all this time." Sebastian laughed weakly, which turned into a cough that racked his thin frame. When he recovered, he looked at her with something like wonder. "You're even more beautiful than I remembered. Not in appearance, though. You look well. In presence. You have this light about you. Confidence. Purpose. You never had that when you were with me." "No," Eleanor agreed. "I didn't. You made sure of that." "I did." Sebastian closed his eyes briefly. "I spent 5 years thinking about what I'd say to you if I ever got the chance. Rehearsing speeches, crafting perfect words. But now that you're here, all those speeches feel hollow. So I'll just tell you the truth, plain and simple." He paused, gathering strength. "I destroyed you at Westminster because I was terrified of you. Not of your money, though I certainly wanted that. I was terrified of your mind, your capability, your quiet strength that made my bluster look pathetic in comparison. Every time you advised me, every time you solved a problem I couldn't solve, every time you showed me how much smarter and better you were than me, I felt smaller. And instead of rising to meet you, I decided to crush you." Eleanor sat very still, listening. "Hazel was easy," Sebastian continued. "She worshipped me because she didn't know any better. She saw the facade I presented and believed it was real, but you knew the truth. You knew I was a baron's son playing at being important, climbing on your money and your connections, and I hated that you knew. So I chose someone who didn't." "Why are you telling me this?" Eleanor asked quietly. "Because I'm dying and I've realized something. I spent my whole life chasing power, titles, recognition. I sacrificed everything, my integrity, my marriage, my health, for the illusion of greatness. And now I'm 37 years old, dying in my mother's guest room, and I have nothing. No title Parliament stripped that years ago. No fortune that evaporated even faster. No legacy who will remember Sebastian Ashford in 10 years. 20. His eyes locked onto hers. "But you, Eleanor, you'll be remembered. The women you've helped, the businesses you've built, the lives you've changed, that's real power. That's real legacy. And I threw away the chance to be part of that because I was too small. Too petty, too afraid to stand beside a woman who was greater than me." A tear rolled down his cheek. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm not even asking you to say you understand, because how could you? I'm just asking you to know that I see it now. I see what I lost, what I destroyed, what I could have had if I'd been brave enough to be your true partner instead of your master. And I'm sorry. God, Eleanor, I'm so sorry." Eleanor felt her own tears rising but blinked them back. She'd cried enough tears over Sebastian Ashford. "Did you love me? Ever? Even in the beginning?" Sebastian was quiet for a long moment. "I thought I did, but I don't think I knew what love was. I loved the idea of you wealthy, connected, beautiful. I loved what you could do for me. But did I love you? The real you, the brilliant woman who deserved a partner who celebrated her strength instead of fearing it? No, I don't think I did. And that might be my greatest regret of all." Eleanor stood, walking to the window. The Surrey countryside stretched out green and peaceful, so different from the grey bustle of London. You want to know something strange, Sebastian? For years I thought I'd destroyed you. I thought my revenge, my refusal to prop you up anymore, was what brought you low. It made me feel powerful, but also sometimes made me feel cruel. But hearing you now, I realize something. You destroyed yourself. You did it long before I withdrew my support. You did it the moment you chose appearance over substance, the moment you valued a crown over a partnership, the moment you let fear guide your choices instead of courage. She turned back to him. I didn't destroy you, Sebastian. I just stopped preventing you from destroying yourself. You're right, he whispered. You're absolutely right. Eleanor returned to the bedside, looking down at the broken man who'd once been her husband. I forgive you, Sebastian. Not because you've earned it or because you're dying. I forgive you because I don't want to carry the weight of your mistakes anymore. They're yours. I gave them back to you years ago, and I'm not picking them up again. Thank you, Sebastian breathed. That's more grace than I deserve. Probably, Eleanor agreed, but grace isn't about deserving. It's about choosing not to let someone else's poison infect your soul. She moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Sebastian, I hope you find peace in whatever time you have left. Not for your sake, but for your mother's. She loves you despite everything. And that's a gift you should try to appreciate. Eleanor, Sebastian called as she reached the door. One more thing. That crown I placed on Hazel's head, the one that should have been yours, I want you to know it's been in my mother's possession since Hazel returned it. Mother kept it for you, hoping someday you might want it back. She says it belongs to you by right, not by ceremony. Eleanor smiled sadly. Tell your mother to keep it or sell it or give it away. I don't need that crown, Sebastian. I never did. The real crown was learning I could build my own throne. As Eleanor descended the stairs, the Duchess was waiting in the foyer. How is he? At peace, I think, Eleanor said. Or at least closer to it than he was. Your Grace, take care of him. Not because he deserves it, but because you do. You deserve to care for your son in his final days without the weight of my anger making it harder. The Duchess embraced. Eleanor suddenly, fiercely. Thank you. For coming. For listening. For being the better person. I'm not better, Eleanor said gently. I'm just further along in my healing. Give it time. That's all any of us can do. On the train back to London, Eleanor watched the countryside give way to city, feeling lighter than she had in years. She'd carried Sebastian's betrayal like a stone in her chest for so long that she'd forgotten what it felt like to be without it. Now, leaving him dying in Surrey, she felt that stone finally crumble to dust. He would die soon. His mother would grieve. History would barely remember him. But Eleanor would continue, building, growing, changing lives. That was the difference between them. She'd learned that legacy wasn't about grand gestures or stolen crowns. It was about the quiet, persistent work of making the world better than you found it. Hopkins met her at the door of her townhouse. How was it, my lady? Necessary, Eleanor said simply. Sometimes we need to see where we've been to truly appreciate where we are. Is there anything urgent? Several letters. An invitation from Oxford University to speak about women's economic independence. A request from Manchester for another initiative branch. And this, Hopkins handed her an ornate envelope with a royal seal. From Buckingham Palace. Eleanor opened it carefully, reading the elegant script. Her eyes widened. Hopkins, the Queen wants to meet with me. Personally. She's considering officially endorsing the Hartwell Initiative and wants to discuss making it a Crown-sponsored program. Hopkins allowed himself a rare smile. If I may say so, my lady, that's far better than any coronation at Westminster. Eleanor laughed, genuine and free. You may say so, Hopkins. Because you're absolutely right. That night, Eleanor stood on her balcony overlooking London. The city sparkled with gaslight and electricity, the new mixing with the old, just like her own life. She thought about the girl who'd climbed those Westminster stairs 5 years ago, so desperate for validation, so certain that a crown would make her complete. She thought about Sebastian dying in Surrey, finally understanding that power taken is nothing compared to power earned. She thought about Hazel, transformed from manipulative princess to skilled artisan. She thought about the 1,000 women whose lives were different because Eleanor had refused to stay broken. And she thought about herself no longer defined by betrayal or revenge or even by forgiveness, just Eleanor, building, growing, becoming more than she'd ever imagined possible. The silver and emerald crown sat somewhere in Surrey, probably in a velvet box, gathering dust. Eleanor had no use for it. She wore a different crown now, invisible to most, but clear to those who knew how to look. A crown woven from resilience, purpose, compassion, and the radical choice to turn pain into power. That crown, Eleanor knew, was the only one worth wearing, and unlike the one Sebastian had denied her, this one could never be taken away.